Hello once again, and welcome to the SNDJ Wedding Reception Planning Podcast, episode number 4. I'm Stacy Knowles, Entertainment Director and Mobile DJ at SNDJ Entertainment in Pensacola, Florida. And in this week's episode, we're going to talk about how to save money on the DJ, the reception, and also how to afford a professional wedding DJ even on a budget. And throughout this whole series of a podcast, we've been talking about ways to make the wedding reception planning a whole lot easier for you. And the one thing that we do want to mention is that you don't have to go and spend an arm and a leg on a venue or something like that to have a wonderful wedding reception. And we're going to talk about that in this week's episode. Once again, my name is Stacy Knowles, Entertainment Director and Mobile DJ at SNDJ Entertainment. And just to give you a quick recap on our previous podcast, we've walked you through a typical wedding reception. We talked about the different parts of the wedding reception and gave you a good order of events for wedding receptions. We also talked about time schedules. We even talked about how to hire a professional wedding DJ and what to look for and things like that. So if you haven't gone back and listened to our first 3 podcast episodes, be sure and go back and check those out. And we're going to go ahead and just build on that in this particular episode, again, by talking about how to save money on the DJ, the reception, and also how to afford a professional wedding DJ, because even if you are on a budget, you can still have a nice wedding reception and can still afford a professional wedding DJ. And we're going to talk about how in this particular episode. And before we get to that, I just want to remind you that this podcast is for everyone, not just couples getting married in Pensacola or along the Gulf Coast. So if you're in another part of the country or something like that, you're going to get something from this series of podcasts. I can promise you that. So again, this is not geared just for people getting married in Pensacola or along the Gulf Coast. The information that we're including in this podcast is good for anybody who is getting married anywhere around the country or around the world for that matter. So I know you'll definitely get something out of that. All right, now in our previous podcast, as I mentioned, we talked about hiring a professional wedding DJ. We went over the planning process and walked you through a typical wedding reception. So now you may be asking, well, that all sounds great, but is there any way that I can save money on a professional wedding DJ and still have a great reception? Well, the answer to that is yes. As we talked about in episode 3, professional wedding DJs are not cheap, and we also talked about how a professional wedding DJ will cost around $1,000 in Pensacola, Florida. Now again, that rate could be different in your area or if you're listening to this podcast at some point in the future. So just keep in mind that we say that a professional wedding DJ will cost around $1,000. That's what it cost in February 2022 in Pensacola, Florida, but it could be different where you are or if you're listening to this at some point in the future. I think it bears repeating, but the way you don't want to save money is by looking up a bunch of DJs online or calling a bunch of DJs, get price quotes, then hire the one who quotes you the cheapest price. But how can you save money on a wedding DJ and your reception and still have a professional wedding DJ? Well, here's some tips to help you out. Number 1, consider having your reception and your ceremony at the same location. This is something that has become very common over the last few years. If you'll need your DJ for your ceremony and reception, then you can save a lot by having your wedding and reception at the same venue, because most wedding DJs will charge extra fees if they have to set up 2 separate sound systems at 2 separate venues. Not only that, it'll just save you money by not having to pay for 2 venues as well. So consider that. And maybe you might want to consider having your wedding at a barn or something like that, where you can have the ceremony outside and maybe the reception inside. That seems to be something that's very common along the Gulf Coast, and it might be common in your area as well. So that's the first tip. Make sure you consider having your reception and your ceremony at the same location. Number 2, consider having your wedding and reception on another day besides Saturday. Probably 99% of weddings happen on Saturday, which in the wedding industry is considered prime time. And you can oftentimes save a lot of money not only on your wedding DJ, but other vendors, including the venue, by simply choosing another day of the week that isn't in high demand. I really can't say 100% you will be able to save by having your reception on another day besides Saturday, because that is up to each individual vendor. But what I can tell you is that a lot of vendors are often looking for midweek work. So if you book on a day that isn't a high demand day, such as Monday through Thursday, they may be willing to give you a discount. But oftentimes they won't advertise this on their website, so be sure and ask. I have known vendors to give discounts for weddings during the week simply because the bride and groom asked and the vendor or venue wanted to fill that extra date. So how much can you save by doing this? Again, that's up to each individual vendor, but I definitely would recommend asking if they offer discounted rates for booking weddings on days other than Saturday. For me personally, I have done a lot of Sunday weddings, so that's often a good day to book as well. Number 3, attend a wedding show. Now this is one I highly recommend. A wedding show is a great place to meet all kinds of professional wedding vendors all in one location at the same time, and often you can save because they offer special just for show attendees that they would not be offering to the general public. At S&DJ Entertainment, we are a vendor of the beautiful Beginnings Bridal Expo every January at the Pensacola Bay Center, and the organizer of the show is very selective on who she lets in the show because she only wants the most professional wedding vendors in the area in her show. Be sure and find out the wedding shows in your area and go to one or two. You'll see professional wedding vendors there, not only just professional wedding DJs, but also photographers, caterers, venues, tuxedo shops, bridal shops, florists, and many other wedding vendors. Most vendors will also run a special that day. In fact, it's very rare if they don't offer some type of show special for show attendees. They may require you to book and reserve your date at the show, or they may give you a date to book by in order to get the show special. S&DJ Entertainment is one venue that does not require attendees at the wedding shows to book that day. We do run a show special, but what we do is give all of our potential brides a flyer that explains the show special, and the flyer also has a date in which they have to book by, usually a few weeks later. We also have a sign-up sheet where they can give us their email address and we will send them a wedding packet. This way, they aren't pressured to book at the show because we know they're meeting a lot of vendors that day, getting a lot of flyers, and it's a lot to take in. This way, when they visit our booth, they can get a flyer, sign our registry, receive an email with our wedding packet. They can then talk it over with mom, dad, fiance, then schedule a consultation with us so that we can discuss their wedding while having some coffee. As long as they book by the date listed on the flyer, which again is usually a few weeks after the show, then we'll let them have the show special. So definitely attending a wedding show can save you a lot of money on a lot of venues and vendors. Number 4, consider having your wedding during one of the less busy months. You can save money on all of your vendors by having your wedding in an off or less busy month. Of course, that's going to vary depending on what part of the country you live in. In the wedding industry as a whole, the busiest time is usually the summertime, usually from Memorial Day to Labor Day, which is late May to early September. That's the period of time nationwide most weddings take place. However, here in Florida, our busy wedding season can often start in March and end in November, so again, it varies. For me personally, I host weddings and events all year, but my busiest months are usually April, May, and October. I have noticed November has started getting busier over the last few years, and we oftentimes have weddings in December. Usually January and February are really dead months. Again, that's here in Florida. In other states, particularly states that get cold much faster and are impacted by a lot of snow, weddings may die off in September and not pick up again until the spring. You may want to consider having your wedding during one of the slow months in your area, and you can save money. Now, how can you save money, you may be asking? Well, it goes back to what we talked about a few minutes ago when we said you might want to consider having your wedding on a day other than Saturday. It's the same concept for having your wedding on another month besides the busy months. Oftentimes, wedding vendors are looking for work during the off time and they want to fill dates, so they may be willing to give you a discount. Again, a lot of times they may not advertise this on their website or voluntarily tell you, so be sure to ask. Wedding vendors will often welcome the work during the slow period. Number 5, consider having a regular party after your ceremony instead of a wedding reception. At S&DJ Entertainment, we will allow our clients to choose a party package instead of a wedding package if that works out better for them. Now, you may be asking, what's the difference between a party and a reception, and how can this save me money on my wedding DJ? Well, the difference is with a party, there really isn't as much planning that goes into a wedding reception, so there definitely would be a difference in cost. Why would you want to take this option? Well, let's say this isn't your first wedding and you don't want all the traditional wedding reception events, or let's just say you want more of a laid-back event without any traditional wedding events, and you really want more dancing and partying. Then you may want to consider having a regular party after your reception. The big difference besides cost is with a party, we would focus more on dancing and partying, and we wouldn't have any traditional wedding reception events. For example, there wouldn't be any wedding party introductions, spotlight dances, toast, and everything we talked about in episode 3. You would still get professional service, but the event would be more like a birthday party or another event with mostly open dancing the entire time. Again, this is something most DJ services may not advertise, but if you aren't wanting all the traditional events that go with a wedding reception, then this may be a good option for you. Be sure to ask the DJ service, and I'm willing to bet that they wouldn't mind letting you choose a party package after your ceremony, but you would need to clarify that. Number 6, avoid having your wedding on a major holiday. You're going to pay more if your wedding falls on a major holiday. If you want to save money, then you would want to make sure your wedding isn't on a major holiday, because oftentimes you will pay a holiday rate, which will be higher than their normal rate, so you definitely would not save any money in most cases. It's going to vary depending on the vendor, but at S&DJ Entertainment, there are only two holidays in which we charge a holiday fee, and clients would pay more. That's New Year's Eve and July 4th, but that's only if the wedding or event is held on New Year's Eve or July 4th itself. We don't charge a holiday fee if it's on the holiday weekend. For example, if July 4th is on a Monday and your wedding is on Saturday, July 2nd or Sunday, July 3rd, there wouldn't be a holiday fee for that. Only if we hosted your event on July 4th itself, and most other DJ services have similar policies. So now let's say you're on a strict budget and you feel you can't afford a nice wedding. Well, I've got some good news for you. You can still have a nice wedding even on a budget. It just takes some careful planning. I've done many weddings over the years where the bride and groom didn't have a lot of money, and yet they still enjoyed a wonderful wedding. Here are some tips to help you out if you're in that situation. Have your wedding and or reception at a private home or other location. Contrary to what you may have heard, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars on a top-of-the-line wedding venue to have a nice wedding. I've done weddings where they've taken place in a backyard and the couple rented a big tent. In another instance, I did a wedding reception at an elementary school cafeteria. Yeah, that's right, an elementary school cafeteria. The bride's mother was a teacher at the school and was able to get the school cafeteria as her daughter's wedding venue. Well, sure, it was a school cafeteria, but her friends and family made that elementary school cafeteria look just as nice, if not nicer, than some of the higher-end wedding venues that I've worked in. She had a wonderful wedding reception, and that's one that I will never forget. And you can imagine how much they saved. So remember, you don't have to have a ton of money to spend thousands on a venue in order to have a wonderful wedding ceremony and reception. Next, instead of hiring a professional caterer, have friends and family bring food. This is another one that can help you if you're on a tight budget. You can save a lot by having your friends and family bring food and set up your own buffet rather than hiring a professional catering company. Of course, we understand you may not want to worry about cooking for your wedding, and if you can afford it, we would definitely recommend hiring a professional caterer. But if you really are on a budget and need to save money, then this is an option that you may want to consider. I've done plenty of weddings where the bride's friends and families brought food, or the family cooked the food on site, and they end up having a wonderful wedding reception. I even had a bride tell me one time that she had her friends and family cook all the food, and she said that it really meant a lot to her because she felt the food was made with love and came from the heart, which made her wedding that much more special. You may also want to consider having your wedding away from a tourist area. In Northwest Florida, having your wedding on or near the beach is very popular, and in other parts of the country, there are popular tourist areas where brides and grooms like to get married and have their reception. Well, if you want to save money, you may want to consider having your wedding ceremony and reception away from the beach or tourist area. Now, why is this important? Well, just like everything else, rates are going to be more expensive in tourist areas such as the beach, or let's say you wanted to rent a venue in Las Vegas. You would pay more for a facility on the Strip than you would in a part of town that isn't visited by tourists. You can really save a lot of money by simply having your wedding and reception just a few miles away, and you can always have an after party at the beach or a major tourist area following the reception. Well, now that we've given you some tips on how to save on your wedding DJ and your reception overall, let's talk about how to afford a professional wedding DJ. In almost 19 years, I can't tell you how many times I've had brides say something like, I really want a professional wedding DJ, but I just don't have any more money in the budget. Here are some suggestions to help you afford a professional wedding DJ, even if you are on a budget. Now, before we get to that, I think it bears repeating. When it comes to your vendors, the two that will make the most memorable impacts on your wedding reception is your DJ and your photographer. These are two vendors you don't want to cut cost on when deciding to eliminate things from the budget because, well, that's very important because they will leave the most lasting memories, which leads me to my first point. Create a budget. That's one of the first things you should do before you book anyone or before you start making a list of vendors and items you want. Look at how much money you have to spend, set a budget, and then go from there. Next, make a list of all the vendors and items that you want, starting with the ones you should hire first. Making a list of everything you need and want is a great starting point. At the top of that list, you would probably want to have vendors such as the venue, photographer, DJ, caterer, and wedding officiant. Then you can move on from there and consider things such as table decorations, flowers, chair covers, etc. Well, this will help you a lot when you start looking at the overall big picture. Next, you'll want to make sure that you book your entertainment early. One of the best ways that you can make sure that you have money in the budget for a professional wedding DJ is to make sure you book your entertainment early. Many times, brides and grooms will book everything else first, the venue, the chair covers, the table decorations, and all of their other vendors, but wait until the last minute to book the one vendor their friends and family will remember the most at their wedding reception, their entertainment. So we recommend hiring your entertainment as one of your first vendors. Remember, 6 months after your wedding, your guests will rate the success of your reception based on your entertainment. Book your DJ between Christmas and the end of February. Now, this doesn't mean your wedding has to take place between Christmas and the end of February. Your wedding can take place later in the year, but this is often your sweet spot for booking your DJ. This is considered the engagement season, and many times DJs will be running specials during this time. This is a time when a lot of wedding shows are happening and a time when brides and grooms are starting to plan their wedding. I would say most of my weddings for the year book and pay their retainer fees during this time, and we often run specials, so it definitely can save you possibly 10 to 15% on your wedding DJ if you book during this period. And this also doesn't apply just for DJs either. Your other vendors may be offering specials during this time, so be sure to check and ask. Go through your list and eliminate things that you really don't need. Well, at this point, you probably made a list of things that you want for your reception, from the chair covers, table decorations, and a lot of other things. Well, let's say you're looking at your list and you're realizing now that you aren't going to be able to afford a professional wedding DJ. So what should you do at this point? Well, we recommend looking over your list, going item by item and eliminating things that you really don't need. Now, I can't tell you what to eliminate, only you can make that decision. But when brides have asked my opinion on being able to afford a professional DJ, I've told them to make a list of all of their items and vendors. Go to each one and just ask yourself, do I really need this? Or if I get rid of this, will this make or break my reception? If the answer is no, then eliminate it from your list. Keep going down your list and eliminating things that you really don't need until you are within your budget to afford a professional wedding DJ. Believe me, you will be so much happier that you hired a professional wedding DJ, and you'll be able to look back on your wedding day with fond memories. At SNDJ Entertainment, our goal is to have all of our brides, grooms, and their guests walking out after the reception saying that was the best reception I have ever been to. Well, I hope these suggestions have been helpful for you. Remember, you can still have a nice wedding even if you are on a budget. It just takes some careful planning and considerations. In our next podcast, we're going to give you some suggestions on how to make your wedding reception successful. We'll give you some do's and don'ts that will definitely help you out. I'm also going to tell you some interesting stories that I have personally experienced in my almost 19 years as a professional wedding DJ. Some of these stories will be moving, some of them will be funny, and they're all moments that I will never forget, and I'm sure anyone who was there will never forget either. If you have any questions, concerns, or if I can help you out, please feel free to reach out anytime, even if you don't live in the Pensacola, Florida area. Remember, this podcast is for everyone, not just brides and grooms along the Gulf Coast. Feel free to call or text SNDJ Entertainment directly at 850-501-1590, or you can email me personally at weddings@sndjpensacola.com. Again, that's weddings@sndjpensacola.com. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have or give you some suggestions as you plan your wedding reception. Once again, my name is Stacy Knowles, Entertainment Director and Professional Wedding DJ at SNDJ Entertainment in Pensacola, Florida. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this podcast. I hope it's been very informative for you. I'll talk to you in episode 5 of the SNDJ Wedding Reception Planning Podcast. Until then, take care.